Our guest today is the commissioner of the Big Ten Conference. He has served in this position for 24 years. The Big Ten administers more than $150 million in athletic scholarship aid to nearly 10,000 students, which is more than any other conference. Our guest today is a native of South Orange, New Jersey. He earned his undergraduate degree in political science and his law degree from the University of North Carolina. Our guest today is married to Catherine Fisher Delany, and they are the proud parents of two sons. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Delany. Jim?
Thank you. It's great to be with you today. It's a little chilly out there. The good news is that I'm going to Philadelphia tonight. The better news is I'm going to Florida tomorrow night. So I'll miss the tipping my toe into the lake. But for those who are doing it, I wish them good luck and have a lot of fun. To me, Chicago is the greatest sports town in America. I've had the good fortune to grow up outside of New York City and live in Kansas City and Nashville, spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. But I think Chicago's interest in high school sports, college sports, professional sports trumps them all because of their broad interest in the way sport just permeates the city. I was disappointed when Chicago didn't get a chance to host the Olympics. I know there are a lot of different points of view on that. But I definitely think this is not only a great American city, but a global city, and we've enjoyed living here for 25 years. We've just finished the Winter Olympics, and I know it was interesting to watch. We had 16 Big Ten athletes and coaches who earned 16 medals, and we also had a couple students, ice dancers from Michigan, who weren't student athletes, who also won some gold. So. We watched that closely and are really proud of what they accomplished. I want to talk a little bit about conference expansion, how it's affected us, and a little bit about the competitive success of the conference, a little bit about the academic success of the conference, and a little bit about what makes a conference great. And I think if you said who's the best football playing conference, you would say probably the SEC. If you said who was the best basketball playing conference over the last decade, you'd probably say the ACC. I think that I could show you, based on the breadth of programs that are offered in the Big Ten, the quality of the academic outcomes, the history, the tradition, the commitment to broad-based, that I don't think there's another conference in the country that does as much for as many people at such a high level of quality and also athletic success. The conference was founded here in 1896 at the Palmer House Hotel, and we've been here for the duration. University of Chicago was a charter member, and in middle 40s made a move. But they're still tied to the Big Ten through an academic consortium called the Committee on Institutional Cooperation, which has been around since 1955, and it's the way that these universities are tied together. Not only athletically, but also academically. So they do lots and lots of things internationally and domestically for students, graduate students. And so when our presidents and athletic directors come together, there's a real kind of an awful lot of activity under the water with relative to research and academics. And so if our presidents come in for a couple-day meeting, they're going to spend a good bit of most of the time on athletics, but also a good bit of time on academics with the provost. So we've got a new building. You probably saw it's a gigantic sign out on 294. So we got some free signage out of it, but it's a meeting. It's a meeting that will probably 130, 140 meeting days of university presidents and provosts and deans and development people. So it's used not only for athletic directors and faculty on athletic matters, but also for other parts of the university. The conference has added 4 members during my tenure. Penn State came in 1990. Nebraska came in 2010, and most recently Rutgers and Maryland. Rutgers and Maryland are in a different region of the country. I think there's been a paradigm shift. Certainly we've been part of it. The SEC is larger. They're into Texas and Missouri, not really southeastern states. And the Pac-12 has got Colorado and Utah. The ACC, when I went to school there, was in Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina. And today it's in Georgia, Florida, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania. So they've spread theirs. We were fortunate with Rutgers and Maryland because they're in contiguous states. They're both flagship universities, both members of the AAU, and really allow us to grow, but also to grow in a way with schools that have some of the same commitments that we have to undergraduate and graduate education. And we added almost 25% to our demographic footprint and only 3% to our geographic footprint. But having grown up in that little strip of land between New York and Philadelphia, it is a long way away. Our goal is to bring it closer together, to bind the conference together. We go from the Colorado border to the Atlantic Ocean, from the Canadian border to the Mid-South in parts, and then from the New York area to Washington, D.C. And my experience has been with Penn State, I didn't think we did as good a job as we could have. It was sort of a new for us, but I think you can really cut down on the time for adoption by spending time with people. The Rutgers and Maryland people have been meeting with us for the last year with voice but not a vote, but we listen closely to what they have to say. We've got a new competitive presentation in football with East and West, no more legends and leaders. For those who didn't like legends and leaders, you could feel comfortable, sleep well at night. It's East and West. The Big Ten Network is an important part of what we do. I think it's probably the most successful of its kind. It's available in 90 million homes. It's available globally on Big Ten To Go, wherever high-speed internet exists. It's got a commitment to men and women's athletics. There's an equal or comparable number of men and women's programs that are shown. It's won awards for original programming. We've got a couple of BTNers here, and they got a great staff. They're located over on Chicago and Larrabee. They have 100-plus people there. Mark Silverman has done a fabulous job of leading that. And I think it's what we tried to do, because a lot of presidents said, well, are you going to have a network, And I said, well, you can take the money from ESPN, or you can take it from CBS, or you can be critical, because sometimes we are critical. They're critical of us. We're sometimes critical of them. We all have First Amendment rights. We all exercise them regularly. But I said, if you're going to take a check, you might as well have some control. And so we're able to do a network that's good for men and good for women, one that does institutional programming on the academic side and also goes without any alcohol or beer advertising. So I think the other thing that's really remarkable in the way it's aligned with our schools is that we've got a sub-brand called Student U. And so there are 20 or 25 students on each of the campuses that produce, announce, and direct programming. So they get a fabulous opportunity working with live events, and then we've been able to hire a number of them upon graduation into the Big Ten Network. So we're going to be working hard over the next number of months to seek distribution in the Eastern Corridor. I hope that is successful. I think it will be, but it's never easy to build a network. Many of you know it took us a year to get full distribution, but we're able to find a good way to do it. So I think it's good for our universities. It spreads the word. We're maybe not a national conference, but we occupy about 15% of the country geographically, about 30% of the demographic. But if you think about Big Ten institutions, we've got 450,000 students under roof. We produce 20% of the PhDs in the country. And because of movement and demographic trends, we're all over the place. We've got 250,000 people living in Southern California. We've got more Big Ten grads in Phoenix than the Pac-12 does. We've got 250,000 people in the New York City area, 1 million people between D.C. and New York City. And so if you go to the west coast of Florida, you're not sure whether you're in Michigan or Ohio or Illinois, because there are a lot of familiar faces there. So it truly is a national conference, if there is one. It aspires to breadth in its bowl relationships. We've got 3 bowl relationships on the West Coast, in San Francisco and L.A. and San Diego, 2 in Texas, Dallas and Fort Worth, 4 in Florida, in Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and Jacksonville, 1 in Nashville, 1 in New York City with the Yankees, and 1 in Detroit. So we're able to do that because of the fan base, the alumni base, and the interest in the teams. So if you would say, are you the best football conference? We aspire to be, but year in and year out, we haven't been. We've played at a high level. But the reality is we are number one in something, and that's number one in the graduation success rate among all of our peer conferences in football. Number one among our peer conferences in women's basketball. Number two in basketball. Men's basketball slightly behind the ACC. They're at 83. We're at 82% graduation success rate. And number one overall. So if you look at the graduation rates, if you look at the efforts to integrate, I think we make a great effort at it. Is it perfect? It is not perfect. Can it be better? It can be better. And we aspire to improve. I don't think that the experience of today's athlete is like my experience was. In some ways it's better. In some ways I think it's more difficult. And our job, I think, is to continue to find ways to make it a compelling athletic experience, a compelling educational experience. And for those of you who have been in a classroom and on a field, I think you would say that there's some things you learn in the classroom that are only learnable in the classroom. And there's some things that you learn on the field that are only learnable in the field. But I would say that anyone who's been in both places realizes there are life lessons in both situations. And so our coaches, our athletes, our administrators want this experience for these 10,000 young people to be at a world-class level. It's not high school sports. It is not professional sports. It is not AAU sports. It is collegiate sports. And if you're going to play in that game, you've got to be competitive. You have to be competitive with facilities. You have to be competitive with academics, and you have to be competitive with a total experience. The thing that I think you can point to about competitiveness is the competitiveness in terms of the breadth of our programs. We have 28 different championships, 350 different teams. As I noted, 10,000 athletes. Right now, there are 5 men's teams that are ranked in the top 25 in the country, 5 women's teams that are ranked in the top 25 in the country, 4 men's lacrosse teams ranked in the top 20 in the country, 4 women's lacrosse teams ranked in the top 20, 9 top 20 wrestling programs, 4 top 12 hockey programs. Some of these are top 5, some of these are top 10. But we're most proud of is we're not about football or basketball only or lacrosse or wrestling. We've got the widest and broadest offerings in the country. In fact, probably as many as 2,000 athletes more than anyone else. I'm also proud of the fact that this conference was the first to commit to opportunities, broad opportunities for women's athletics. When I came in, we were 72-28, 72% for the men, 28% for the women. We stated that we wanted to get to 50-50. We couldn't get there in a day. You can't get from A to C without going to B. We got to 60-40 in the middle of the recession of the early 90s. And how do you do that? You do that by consolidating resources, being smart, reallocating. It wasn't always great for men's Olympic sports. It wasn't always great for football. The average squad size in football was 138. It was ratcheted down to 105. There are more scholarships in women's basketball than there are in men's basketball, so there was reallocation. We've been very successful in the last decade, and it's accrued to the benefit of all of our programs in terms of facilities, academic support system, and the way that they travel and the media coverage that they get. It's not just football and basketball. It's football and basketball and soccer and lacrosse and hockey and synchronized swimming and diving and cross country and track and golf. So we aspire to be national. We aspire to compete nationally, and our institutions are all of a national quality. So this is an area. This is an area of discussion. The great thing about America is that people can have different opinions about this. And we have a way to resolve those things. If we disagree, we don't shoot each other. We go to court, or we can go to court, and at the end of the day, someone is going to make that judgment. My dad played in college. I played in college. My brother played in college. My son played in college. My wife wished she would have played in college, but it was a little bit before Title IX. But she's the best athlete of the group. She's got a single-digit handicap, and she's playing platform tennis up on the North Shore today. So she didn't have that opportunity, but those opportunities are there today. And they're there not only because there's a federal law about it, but they're there because it's the right thing to do. And it's part of what we do, whether it's on our campuses or whether it's across the conference. So a lot of the existential threats and questions about whether or not these are students or whether they're employees or whether or not they should be paid, you could easily interpret from my comments what I believe, but it's not important what I believe. I believe it, and I'll advocate for it. What's important is we have a way for that to resolve that in this country. And so I don't have any problem with anybody else who has a different opinion, nor do I have a problem with people seeking redress of what they think is right or wrong. I think we've got a story. I'm willing to advocate to that story, and I'm willing to talk about where we have the shortcomings, where we do incredibly well, and where we can do better. And I'm hopeful as the NCAA reinvents itself and restructures itself that those who do have resources can do better for the athlete in every way, shape, and form. And where things are not balanced, that we can bring them into greater balance. But this is an institution. Arnie Duncan, I thought it put it well about 5 years ago. He spoke to the NCAA delegates, and he said, other than the United States military, there's probably not another institution that affects as many young people in terms of teaching discipline and the experiences of being on a team that college athletics, but just not college athletics in the Big Ten, college athletics at William, college athletics at the Mid-American Conference, college athletics at the Big East. These are opportunities. I read last week where Pew Research came out with a report and really emphasized again the difference in the quality of life for those individuals who have a chance to go to college and what that does not only intellectually but also in terms of economic benefits. And today, as knowledge economy becomes more important, that opportunity, nobody can make a kid become an educated person. Only the person can put the time and effort. But the opportunities that are here, the $150 million in scholarship fund is quite unique because we all know that we're either paying it or we're borrowing it. And so for the 100,000 kids in Division I and the 300,000 kids in Division II and Division III, the opportunity to play, to go to school and have those experiences, I think, is well worth our time and effort in advocating, making it better, and supporting that. So let me stop there. It's a little bit about the Big Ten, where we've been, where we are, and where we hope to go, and I'll take some questions. Thank you.
They're going around. Yes, better late than never. Raise your hand if you have a question, and someone will pick it up. There you go, Earl. Oh, Father, because of that great invocation we're giving you first, Father. Are you ready for this? He's one of our stars. Assume for a moment that the unionization movement for collegiate athletes succeeds. How do you think college athletics will change? 25 words? Yeah, no, you take one.
I think that's very hard to envision, exactly how that would play out. But I presume that we'd have to get some guidance from Congress with regard to Title IX. I think you'd have to envision what happens in right-to-work states. We're all so used to having, an effort to keep competition kind of equal, same number of scholarships, same number of games, the same criteria. So I think that you could easily have unions or maybe strong in certain parts of the country and weak in other parts of the country. I don't know how Title IX happens, and I really don't know what happens if you're in a right-to-work state versus a state where there's a lot of union, activity or a lot of union representation. So I have a really hard time envisioning what it would be. Certainly, where you had tremendous benefits at one place and lesser benefits at another, or somebody with a clear crystal ball would have to describe what it might look like. But I think that there would have to be some congressional understanding of how these laws that relate to antitrust and the laws that relate to Title IX and the laws that relate to funding and whether a person's somebody could be an employee at one school and not employee at another school. It doesn't seem to me to have a kind of an easy and smooth response, but everything, we've had wars in this country, civil wars, we've had riots in this country, we've had a lot of ways to resolve disputes. What I'm really happy is we have a peaceful way to resolve this dispute at the end of the day, and we respect the individuals and we respect the system, and ultimately it will evolve. I mean, the scholarship, wasn't around for my father. It was work study, and then you had the scholarship, and now you have scholarship plus Pell money, plus you have, special assistance money. So, there's probably a way. If that's what ultimately happens, but it's not something that I will be around for sure.
Good answer, Jim. Well, Mr. Delany, now that we gave you a softball question, we'll give you a harder one, huh? This is from Tom Leahy. Where are you, Tom? Raise your hand. I assume you're here. All right. Sorry, Father. Who is your most important constituent? The athlete, the team, the university, or someone else?
I work for university presidents and chancellors, so they hire me, they fire me, they reward me, and they penalize me. So I work for them, and I work with everybody else. I work with athletic directors and coaches. I think ultimately we're all working for the experience of the 10,000 athletes, and it's partly educational, it's partly competitive. These are huge institutions, and I think athletics performs a different function in different places. If you go to Williams College, it's small and it's intimate and it's community-based. Here, it's much larger, it's much more significant. But in many ways, the universities, because of their size and their scale, require, in some ways, invite ways to come together. And it's not new. I mean, Harvard built the largest steel and concrete structure in 1903. And so that was for purposes of bringing their alumni and their fans together. So you have some of those. They're pretty unique. You don't have this system in Asia, although they're over here studying it, trying to figure out how they might translate and transport it. You don't have it in Europe. You have a different kind of approach, and it works for them. You don't have it. You don't have it in Africa. So it's uniquely American. It's aspirational. It's different than professional. It's different than high school, and it's different than a playground ball. It's different than going to the Y. So it gets a lot of attention, has its own place in the newspaper, and it's evolved over time, but it's also produced problems over time. Whether it's compliance with rules, the competitive instincts are very strong, and what's unique is all of the kids who are playing, they're all full-time students. In professional sports, they're not in school. They're full-time athletes. And I think what we expect sometimes, and probably one of the areas that we have to bring more into balance, is the amount of time. The amount of time that the kids spend today is different than what I spent. And we played a fairly highly competitive situation. But there's also probably more opportunity today than there was when I played. When I played, it was largely white and male. Today it's far more integrated and it's far more female friendly. So it's changed in some good ways. It probably has changed in some ways that you could take a step back and improve upon. But the reality is it's serving 100,000 kids in one division and 300,000 kids overall. And there are 1,000 schools out there, and I think there's a lot there that's worth emphasizing the goodness about.
Okay. Another easy question for you. This is from John Head, the PSC Group. Where are you, John? There you are, way in the back. Go Illini. My cufflinks here. What are your thoughts on the new NBA commissioner wanting to change the one-and-done rule for basketball athletes to something more like the NFL, 3 years, 21 age requirement?
I don't think the one-and-done has been good. I don't know that the NFL has been good. I don't know that the Major League Baseball rule is good. I wish that we could recruit students that want to go to college and stay in college. And if they want to leave, I think there should be a clear path to leave. There should be choice. And so, there's been a lot of discussion over the years about access to professions. In fact, there's been a lot of discussion over the years about access to college. Black athletes didn't have access to half of the colleges in the country at one time. That was not that long ago. And so I want choice, and I want young people to be able to go to school if they want to go to school. I want them to be able to go into professional sports if that's what they want to do. And I don't really like anything that's artificial, that forces people to go here or there. I know some of our coaches might like it, but as a person, there's nothing wrong with John McEnroe going after his first year at Stanford. There's nothing wrong with Tiger Woods going. I don't think there's anything wrong with Kevin Durant going. If that's what they want to do, let them go. And I think they should be able to go out of high school, and I don't think any union or any other person ought to come together. If it goes to, let them go to the D League, let them go to IMG, let them train. I know when they come here, I want them to get an education. I want them to be inspired towards that. I want them to compete at a very high level, and I hope that that's a good situation. So I'm sort of agnostic about one and done and NFL and Major League Baseball. They all have their own thing, but that's between them. Labor and management work that out, and I don't think that we ought to inject ourselves. We could have a personal opinion, but I don't think we're part of that.
Now, the moderator never asks a question, except now. Mr. Delany, isn't there a difference between a single sport like tennis or golf, where the university doesn't make a ton of money off these kids, and someone going, like they're just recruiting these kids now for basketball and football, especially basketball, where they make a fortune off them and the kid doesn't have to go to class because the worst thing he does is he gets kicked out of school. He's going the next year anyways. So isn't there some kind of, in your analogy, golf and tennis aren't big sports for college income. Basketball and football are. How would you respond to that?
I would respond, there's a reason why they don't let moderators ask questions.
Fair enough. Patrick Collins, can I see you after the meeting? We'll nail this guy. Okay. Trying to help out, guys. Okay, here we go. Kevin Fuhr, AECom. Explain the Rose Bowl in the one of 3 years it isn't Big versus Pac-12. Is the game still the Rose Bowl, or is it simply playoff semifinal game?
Good question.
Except for the moderator, really good question.
That was an excellent question. Glad we could get to it. In a 12-year period, there'll be 8 pure Rose Bowls, and on 4 occasions there'll be a semifinal game there. I think that the Rose Bowl mark will be used in those semifinal games. So this was the 100th Rose Bowl game this year. Next year will be the first semifinal game. So for the Rose Bowl, it will be the 101st Rose Bowl. So there'll be 12 years, 12 Rose Bowls, 8 of which will be Big Ten, Pac-12, and 4 of which will be semifinal games.
Okay. John Weber, will we see more Eastern sports, such as lacrosse, on BTN now with the addition of Rutgers and Maryland?
Yes.
Y'all got that? Okay. Wait a minute. Just ask. Hey, Kevin, you're only allowed one question. I'm sorry here. Mike, that mailer. Okay, RBS Citizens. What's your take on the athletic academic issues being discussed at UNC? You ready for that one?
I am.
All right.
It didn't come from you, did it?
No. I'm not a Tar Heel.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a tough 4 years. A lot of embarrassment, a lot of investigations. A lot of people moved on. The coach moved on. The chancellor resigned. The athletic director resigned. A lot of pain. And as I noted earlier, there's a lot of joy in part with athletics, and we're pretty heavily regulated. And in these cases, in 3 or 4 different areas, there was real failure. by people and by systems. And I know that there are some rules and laws down there dealing with agents, and I think that the state is engaged. And I just read the other day where the university chancellor had appointed an independent outside counsel to investigate what else might come there. So it's been really difficult. My son is a senior there. My other son is a graduate, and I've got a lot of friends there. I'm on a couple boards there. So, I only know what I read. I don't know all the insides, but, for a person who has got a lot of pride in the place and part of it, it's been embarrassing and difficult.
Okay, 2 more questions. One just a real quick one. A late arrival. Jake, Plewa, very short question. What are your thoughts on paying college athletes to play?
I don't think we should.
Good answer. Good question. Good answer. Last question. Mike, we got to have some penmanship class here, Mr. R-O-T-T-E. Mike, is that close? All right, not even here, obviously. From Renew Chicago. Did that give you a clue? Last name? You say so. Okay. To the extent that you can, oh, this is good. Great way to end this. To the extent that you can, please comment on where you see the Big Ten expanding in the next several years.
I can't. I really, we don't have any plans. We're not active. You don't ever know what's in the future. If you had asked me and before I got here whether or not we were going to expand with Penn State, I wouldn't have had a very good answer. We stayed there for 20 years. We added Nebraska. A lot of things continued to change. There was a paradigm shift in many, many ways. So conferences were in the Big Ten competing with us. There were movements and changes, all of which went into our thinking. If we could find institutions that were flagship, that were in contiguous territories, we would consider it. And at the end of the day, we thought there was good reason to. Everything changes. There's been a lot of evolution. Some of the changes that have happened around the country will sustain. Others won't. I think these are sustainable changes because of the commonality among the schools. I think being in 2 regions is a real challenge for us and others, and we have to spend extra elbow grease to make everybody feel part of it. And we intend to do that. This was a great Midwestern conference for near 100 years, and then we added Penn State, and Penn State is a school that faces east and fully integrated, fully compatible, fully a part of our culture and our history now. And Nebraska, a pretty easy change, contiguous state, even though they had been history in the Big 8 and the Big 12, easy integration. Rutgers and Maryland both want to be here. We want them to be there. It's another area of the country, and I just think you have to work harder to make people feel welcome, show respect. But it's about their athletes. It's about competition. I think when Texas A&M beat Alabama, they felt part of the SEC right away. So the faster teams have success, the more they feel part of it. And I think that both of those schools will have their share of success. We're really happy to have them, and we're going to work awful hard to make them feel part of the Big Ten. Thank you.
Nice round of applause. We got some parting gifts.